Okay, there are final thoughts from the panelists, except for me, I give mine. There are final thoughts from the panelists, and then we'll close out for the evening.
Thank you. Just Ashe to everything Brother Ian just said. I am past the point of looking to the government, any foreseeable government, for any kind of solution to anything, any sort of problem that I have, that we have as a country. The education system is the way the government needs it to be, right? That way, when they offer us jobs at some point at Bahamas, we can say, oh, okay, thank you, right? Because if they really were creating thinking-driven individuals, we wouldn't stand for that. We wouldn't stand for them, right? So can't look at the government and say, you're doing this wrong. They are doing things exactly right for what they need. And I think part of our situation is we look at our leaders and they look like us, so we feel like they are from among us. And perhaps that may have been the case at some point, but it's no longer the case now. They've become a part of the structure of which we're talking, and we will talk about solutions soon, Mr. Christie. That's the next talk. But I am past that point, and I think that the best, my vision of a revolution is a society of people who have decided to lead themselves, lead each other, guide each other, bring each other up, and stop looking on top of any hill for any person in any suit and any fancy car to take you with them to Cable Beach when they go home, because they're not. They can drive straight past you.
I just want to spend 1 minute on highlighting someone that I discovered in my research. And it's so vivid today to see the son of Mr. Percy Christie. And just 2 paragraphs. It says, this is an excerpt from the Bahamas News, November 24th, 1937. And it talks about the union leaders meeting at the Knights of King George. And those union leaders were the president of the union, Mr. Charles Rodriguez, Honorable A.K. Solomon, MCE MHA, Dr. Walker MHA, and Mr. Percy Christie MHA, and Mr. Holly Brown, officer of the union. And it did give some comments of Mr. Christie. It said, Mr. Christie advised the members to stick to the union and pay their dues. He bade them look ahead to tomorrow and build for the future. If they let the union fall, all will fall with it. And this is 1937. And so he was a proponent for the advancement of the worker. Am I to understand that we have another section or segment that will deal with solutions?
Yes.
Most of my comments, if I would make them, is on the solution side. So should I just acquiesce for now? Okay. 2 years ago, Mr. Wesley Campbell and myself saw that we were at a critical juncture in our society. And we were at that juncture because of one word: hopelessness. In our inner cities, the people who we would believe to be primed for this type of activity, there is a level of, there is hopelessness among them. Prostitution is the highest form of employment in the Bahamas today. People spinning numbers, a close second. There's a high level of hopelessness in our society. So recognizing this, 2 years ago we set about the not only idea, but the challenging ourselves to bring about hope in the country, because we knew we had enough in the country to bring about hope. Hence, we challenged the government to disclose the oil agreement when it was being said that there was no oil in the Bahamas. And we were aware that our oil traps, which are 3 traps, rivaled that of the Middle East. And that's scientific. Secondly, we highlighted the Aragonite issue. Knowing what our Aragonite is sold for, our Aragonite is sold for on the open market. And the Bahamas not benefiting at all from it. We knew that there was hope in the Bahamas. It's just that we were tapping into the wrong economy. Thirdly, our salt makes billions on a monthly basis, not only because of it being sold in the U.S. For de-icing of roads and the box salt, but our salt also goes into Canada, and the sodium nitrate is taken out and sent to Germany, which goes to make ammunition, which is another high source of revenue, income that can be derived or that the Bahamas can benefit from, and is not benefiting at all. So our hope is right here. And we wanted simply to present, and we are on a mission to present to the Bahamas that there is another way. There is a way of prosperity that would replace all of this taxation as a primary means of financing the government, and that could bring prosperity to the Bahamas and the Bahamian people. I would not wish to discuss a transition mechanism at this time, but there is one that could be followed. Thank you so much.
I would like to come back, if we're sort of on the solutions track now, and just sort of say, yes, I genuinely agree that we need to ensure that we get more out of our educational system than we do right now. And perhaps that will then allow us to ask some important questions. As I said earlier on, one of the recommendations coming out of the Russell Commission straight after Burma Road was that the Bahamas should look at a progressive income tax, and we all know to this day that hasn't happened. Now, another part of our national narrative is that in 1967 we got something that we like to call majority rule, and we say that majority rule replaced a self-serving oligarchy run by a mercantile elite or something like that.
That's pretty good.
And here I am looking at just the data coming out of the last elections. Majority rule, this is majority rule, this is what represents us. The average MP is upwards of 50 years old, when the average Bahamian is about 29 years old. The average MP has a declared net worth of $2.34 million, and just 13% of IMPs are female. Now, it's realities like that really make it unlikely for us to have any justified hope in looking for the government for solutions. unless perhaps we ask some questions before we go to the polls and give ourselves a House of Assembly with those stats. Just saying.
Okay, it was totally my pleasure to be a part of this. It was even better than I thought, but to do the official closing, we'll have one of the organizing members of CCF.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our participants, including the people at our head table here and the audience for being here. Let's give everybody a round of applause, please. So just to connect a little bit to history, the Critical Caribbean Symposium series started in 2011 at the College of the Bahamas as an attempt to celebrate the life and work of Frantz Fanon, one of the most important thinkers of revolution in the decolonization period. That we're having this conversation tonight is evidence of why it was necessary to create the series. And I want to leave us with a thought from Frantz Fanon, because one of the things that Frantz Fanon talks about, particularly in his The Wretched of the Earth, which I think should be required reading for everyone, is the fact that part of revolution has to do with the creation of a consciousness for revolution, right? So that if the focus is on education, it has come back a couple of times this evening, Fanon in '62 identified consciousness raising, a kind of education for revolution as a foundation for change. That Burma Roads happened was a direct result of an economic injustice, but there was also another step that would have been necessary, which would have been the raising of a consciousness to bring about foundational and fundamental change. Of Burma Road is perhaps the unfinished work of raising the consciousness, right? And that's something that I think we can all be committed to, and that's part of why the Critical Caribbean Symposium series and these community conversations that we're having now, that was the intent behind creating the series. So I want to thank our participants, Ean Maura, Keisha Ellis, Reverend Strawn, and Stephen Aranha for sharing their thoughts with us. I want to thank you for participating and being here. This is an important conversation, and we hope that you join us for ongoing conversations of this kind. I feel like that there's some people in this audience that we need to record. Mr. Christie, for example, that history that you spoke to. I don't remember your name, but some of the things, Smith, in terms of union organizing, etc. So let's commit to continuing that work. I also want to thank the Historical Society for allowing us the space to have this conversation this evening. It is really important that we have spaces to have this kind of engagement. There's a point where, we end up talking to the same crowd. Hopefully you take this within your spheres of influence and begin to carry that message onwards. We also have to thank Ean Maura and the Endaba Project for partnering with us in order to make this evening happen. And also just to remind you that this fall, the Critical Caribbean Symposium series is going to be hosting its 5th symposium, and we're going to be looking at the life and work of Stewart Hall. Stewart Hall comes out of that 60s movement of decolonization and has produced some important work that is time for us to go back to and engage. So please look out for information about that. That's coming up this fall. Also, in order for us to be able to do this kind of work, much of this is volunteer, so donations are welcome in any form, in any kind. So again, if you're committed to this kind of work, we also need commitment that's financial or otherwise. Right, and there's a sign-up sheet in the back there for email addresses if you want to be on the email list, so we can keep you informed about the work that we're trying to do. Now, before we go, there's a drink that's available in the back if you want to mull around a little bit and continue the conversation with the participants. Please do so, because there are things that can happen in the informal session that is also as productive as this formal engagement. Again, thank you all very much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.